morning, good morning, good morning. What a beautiful Easter morning. It's gorgeous, just fantastic. Thank you, Alex. Welcome to United Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Whether you are joining us here in the sanctuary or online, my name is Reverend David Kraemer, minister here at the church. Helping with today's service are Jennifer Beiriger, Alex Chilsen, and Aaron Hurwitz, and then, of course, all of you. What a great day. I told several of you there was a turkey out in the garden. John Breacher says there were actually 3 of them hanging around earlier. So, wrong holiday, but still I think it's auspicious. So good. A few things to lift up before we begin. As you can see, we have items out for our annual auction. All of the stuff over on the tables and on the purple board there back on the pew, stuff that's online, it is in the online auction, which is opening up actually late tonight. Tomorrow is our official opening for the live auction, but Gilles will get it going before he goes to bed tonight. So you can begin bidding on all of the live auction stuff. In addition to that, the bike also is online. The other stuff over there on the table and the ticketed items will be for the live auction, which will be the 22nd. So you should have all that on your calendars, I think, and there will be more announcements. Yes, Susan.
Just one part. You mentioned the ticketed items. You can also get those online. They're going live with the silence.
The ticketed items are online as well, along with the rest of the items over on the left. Thank you. Okay. A few other things. As you might know, we are putting together a Rainbow Land choir to sing before the school board meeting on Wednesday in protest of the banning of the song by Miley Cyrus and Dolly Parton by the school board. There will be a practice tomorrow here at church at 5:30, and for anybody who can make it, and if you can't, that's okay, but do join us if you can at 5:30 on Wednesday, just before the school board meeting at the Lindholm Administration Building on Maple Avenue. A little bit more on that in just a few minutes. Next Sunday will be the last Sunday you might want to bring meals, pre-prepared meals for Pat Leung, who will be having surgery a little later on this month. So if you are willing to help out with that, that'd be great. Today, we are celebrating Easter. We're returning to the UU canon of sorts. We'll be harking back to some of the luminaries in our traditions that have made us who we are today, and also singing some songs and some reciting some poetry that I think probably will be familiar to many of you, reflecting on our roots. With that, let's begin our service by lighting our chalice. Now, Isabel, would you come up and help us, please? All right, you can do it. Oh. Yay. Okay, with these words, may this flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth. Here together we scatter and nurture service, and community. Let's sing together. Hymn number 1000 in the teal hymnal, if you have it, or here on the wall. Morning has come. Please rise and body your spirit.
Morning has come. Oh, rise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope shines upon each face. May guide your journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. See it bring faith to guide your journey home. Open our eyes to see that abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love that shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
So we're going to do things just a little different today. I had announced on Tuesday that we would hold a noisy offering, inviting you to bring change from home, and we will put it in some bowls back there to make some noise. And then we had another idea this morning. Melissa Temple, who is the teacher at Higher Elementary, who has been the subject of the controversy over the Rainbow Land song, is on forced leave. So we had the idea that we'd make a little noise and donate today's offering to Melissa. We will probably keep that donation open through this week, and I'll put something in the Tuesday announcement as well. But today, anything that you have to contribute, we're going to send off to Melissa. Okay? And now I want to invite the ushers, the folks who will be collecting to come forward. And would you guys come up front, because I'm going to get this started.
Bunny trail, hippity hoppity, Easter's on its way. Bringing every girl and boy baskets full of Easter joy, things to make your Easter bright and gay. He's got jelly beans for Tommy, colored eggs for Sister Sue. There's an orchid for your mommy and an Easter bonnet too. And here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail. Hippity hoppity, Easter's on its way. Here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail, looking himself and listens to him say, try to
Nice. So I have a story. The story today is what do you do with an idea? I read this once here a long time ago. If you've been here for a while, you might remember it. It's been a long time. One day I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here? I wondered, what do you do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I didn't know what to do with it. So I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me. But it followed me. I worried what others would think. What would people say about my idea? So I kept it to myself. I hid it away, and I didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as it was before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit. I felt better and happier when it was around. It wanted food. It wanted to play. It actually wanted a lot of attention. It grew bigger, and we became friends. I showed it to other people, even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid they would think it was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time and that it would never become anything. And at first I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized what do they really know? This is my idea. I thought no one knows it like I do. And it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it, to care for it. I fed it good food. I worked with it, played with it, but most of all, I gave it my attention. My idea grew, and so did my love for it. I built it a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it could be safe to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big, and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands because, it said, it is good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. And then one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my very eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was now a part of everything. And then I realized what you do with an idea, you change the world. That's my story. So now I think children may go back to the child care room with Adia, and let's sing them out.
Peace.
Easter. So, resistance or surrender? To resist or oppose, to surrender or yield. From Ecclesiastes chapter 3, a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time for war and a time for peace, and maybe a time for resistance and a time to surrender. From Kenny Rogers, know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away and know when to run. Or from the Borg, resistance is futile. Well, sometimes. To resist breathing is futile. To resist oppression is necessary. What have I done that would or could be considered resistance? How about surrender? Can I pinpoint how to determine what and when to resist or when to surrender? I thought and read and thought some more, and then I had an idea. How do I know when to hold them and when to fold them, when to rest and when to engage? It occurred to me that Pam and I have done this for years by simply listening to what our gut, our intuition, our higher self, our inner voice is saying. Who would have ever thought that two women in their 30s, one Catholic and one Lutheran, would be able to resist all the teachings and dogma of their religions and society and take a giant leap into the unknown by acknowledging and surrendering to this newly discovered love? And that this love could override the previously held societal propers, and the realization that God would not strike them down for their love. Years later, when we chose to move from Colorado to Wisconsin, where we could get the help we needed for our child, it was an immediate surrender to what was the right path. When the world is giving us challenges and decisions must be made but the ways seem daunting, we reach inside and seek. Sometimes with particularly difficult issues, we flounder. Then we take time to breathe and seek some more. And sometimes we'll reach out to our external support systems, our community. Sometimes it's hard to see clearly through the fog of self-doubt. To resist letting go and letting be can be difficult, and it varies depending on circumstances. The path forward, no matter how complicated or intense, seems relatively smooth sailing as we navigate uncharted and particularly rough waters through our life. That voice within, that inner self, guides with a deep connection of caring and love. Listening to my spiritual self can be difficult at times, especially when faced with the multitude of disharmony in our world. Injustices abound. It can be overwhelming, feeling the pull to resist the direction in which our community, state, nation, world is heading. In order to survive the challenges of my personal and family life as well as society's, I have had to set boundaries, to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to run. Maybe it's recognizing my own limitations and my own needs and knowing when to shelter in place as opposed to running away, to resist the outward issues of life and surrender to the need to love and care for the self. That's a hard lesson to learn, but is necessary to recharge, to be ready to step forward and join in with others, to be able to say when enough is enough. So, on April 12th, I will surrender to my need and belief in community and show, especially after what we just heard about the teacher, and show my resistance to the banning of the singing of Rainbow Land by some Waukesha first graders. To sing these controversial words, we are rainbows, me and you, every color, every hue. Let's shine on through, together we can start living in a rainbow land. From Amanda Gorman in her inaugural poem, The Hill We Climb. For there is always light if we are brave enough to see it, if we're brave enough to be it.
Let's sing together. Spirit of life, you may remain seated for this.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings that set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Each week we share in the life of this congregation by sharing bits and pieces of our individual lives, our joys and sorrows. If you have something to share, I would invite you to come forward, speak into the mic, take a stone from the bowl, hold it in your hand, and when you are finished, place it in the bowl with the water to let the ripples carry your concerns out to the wider community.
Walking with you is our prayer.
More in a few minutes, but the service title today, Surrender, might be an odd one for Easter. Our theme for the month was resistance, and so I've been trying to piece together how to fit this, and I don't know if it does or not, but the contrast between resistance and surrender, I think, is rich, and I think that all that is going on in our world today and in our lives speaks to that. Today's a day for joy, and also for the deep understanding of all that life is. Words from Gretchen Haley. Although there remains too much evidence of the world breaking apart at coastlines, congressional hearings, and kitchen tables, inside the quiet places of your heart and mine, there resides still the seeds, the longing to return to this, knowing that we belong to each other, this earth, this life, to remember ourselves and all of our lost pieces, be loved in ways that cannot be undone, to dwell here in this healing, this hope, this wholeness is our practice of resistance. Even in rage, we refuse to relinquish gratitude or joy.
Broken windows and empty hallways, a pale dead moon in a sky streaked with gray. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. scarecrows dressed in the latest styles, with frozen smiles to chase love away. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. Right before me, the signs implore me to help the needy and to show them the way. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today.
Our reading today is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not need to have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep rivers, the mountains and the trees. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clear blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
So along the Riverwalk in front of the state office building, the goose is back. Actually, I should say geese, because up next to the building in a kind of a little alcove, the hen is sitting on eggs where she has chosen to nest for the last several years. The male, the one that I'm talking about, is posted down by the path where he comes charging at anyone coming by, head down, neck like a snake, hissing, wings akimbo, harsh and exciting. Is terrifying. I've witnessed this a half a dozen times already this year and experienced it myself. A man I see regularly on the walk says he's even seen the goose chase the cops. It's not intimidated by a uniform. This will go on for 28 days until the goslings hatch and happiness returns. So in the meantime, I have begun choosing to go around the back of the building, which is not as scenic, but avoids the conflict. I choose not to think of this as chicken shit. I choose instead to think that this is reducing a little stress in the world, both for me and for the goose. Why provoke it? Let it go. The goose has every bit as much right to the real estate as I do. I admit I also take this approach with the protesters out in front of Planned Parenthood right next to our apartment building. When I walk from the lot where I park my truck to the door, I am afraid of what I might say, how I will respond, which might not be good. So I choose to go around the back to avoid them. Just because I have the freedom to do something, to stand up to the goose, doesn't mean I have to do it. Maybe choosing not to do something you are free to do actually exercises more power. Maybe choosing to surrender to the path of least resistance is a way to resist the aggressiveness that resides in my nature as well. I don't know. I feel like I should say something to those protesters, but maybe there are other ways of cooking their goose that are more effective. Another sermon. Resistance is our theme for April, and so in preparing for this service, I've been thinking about how to reconcile that with Easter, reconcile resistance with Easter. The resistance that Jesus exemplified in his life might offer us one way. There is a line of thought that says to understand why Jesus died, you don't need to know anything more than the way he died. That tells the whole story. Crucifixion in ancient Rome was meted out primarily to enslaved people, pirates, think of the two robbers who flanked Jesus, and especially in this case, to enemies of the state. This was a most gruesome and humiliating spectacle intended to dissuade of anyone from following in their footsteps. Along with being of a lower class and so more likely to be subject to such a death, Jesus was arrested and killed as an enemy of Rome. This runs against a more orthodox line of thought, which says that the reason Christ died was to save you from your inherently sinful nature through the doctrine of substitutionary atonement. Jesus was both fully human and fully divine in this view, of the same substance as God the Father and the Holy Spirit. To say that his death was purely political has been anathema in the Christian church. As the separation of church and state continues to erode in this country, I wonder whether that is changing as well. But for Unitarians and Universalists, the idea of Jesus as leader of the revolution, in the same league as Lao Tzu and the Buddha, Mohammed, Galileo, Che Guevara, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, and not to mention Kuan Yin, Teresa of Avila, Harriet Tubman, Mother Teresa. This has always made more sense to us. So maybe our own resistance to dogma offers another take on Easter. In 1819, William Ellery Channing preached a sermon on the ordination of Jared Sparks, known famously as the Baltimore Sermon, which embraced for the first time the name Unitarian and laid out a comprehensive Unitarian theology. In the course of arguing for the use of reason in interpreting Scripture and for the singular unity of God, Channing also clearly articulated a view of Jesus as wholly human. To say that he was both human and divine makes a mockery of the crucifixion, Channing argues. If Christ in his divine mind infinitely greater than his human, fully on board with God's plan to save humanity through this grisly act, then all agony, all human suffering disappears. By this reasoning, whilst hanging on the cross, Channing scoffs, he was the happiest being in the universe. Channing came to prominence at a time when the New England churches were splitting between those who believed in a loving and benevolent God and those who clung to a wrathful and punitive God. between those who believed that humans were good and capable of understanding right and wrong, and those who believed we are depraved and captive to sin. Jesus, in the first case, points the way toward human potential, and in the second case, pays through blood atonement for original sin. Jesus, in the Orthodox view, does offer a human face to the divine. In one conception, God the Father is the disciplinarian, Jesus is the mediator. God is unapproachable directly. Jesus provides a doorway. There is some attraction to this. I know when I was in seminary, I remember having a conversation with my roommate. I get the idea of God, I said, but I've never quite understood what to do with Jesus. Jesus is the whole deal, he says. Jesus makes it real. Jesus gives you someone you can talk to. My roommate says he cannot understand God without Jesus. Jesus is the way. For me, the humanization of Christ does more than demote Jesus. In destroying the singularity of Christ's divinity, Channing universalizes it. He makes God a part of everyone, everything. 20 years after Channing, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in what is known as the Divinity School address, these two things are really important in our history, expands on this. Jesus Christ belonged to the true race of prophets, Emerson writes. He saw with an open eye the mystery of the soul. Drawn by its severe harmony, ravished with its beauty, he lived it and had his being there. Alone in all history, he estimated the greatness of humanity. One man was true to what is in you and in me. He saw that God incarnates God's self in humans and evermore goes forth anew to take possession of the world. But what a distortion did his doctrine and memory suffer in the same, in the next, and in the following ages, Emerson writes. Churches are not built on his principles, but on his tropes. He spoke of miracles, for he felt that human life was a miracle. And he knew that this daily miracle shines as the character ascends. But the word miracle, as pronounced in Christian churches, gives a false impression. It is monster. It is not one with the blowing clover and the falling rain. Emerson resists the dogma of the day, which held God to be either completely transcendent and unknowable, or the subject of dry analysis. God, or what Emerson sometimes called the oversoul, was very much alive in the world and in human beings, including, but not more so, in the human being that we now know as Christ. Whatever was holy in him is holy in you. Out on the Riverwalk, I often worry. Not about whether I'm going to get goosed, but about my life and about our lives together and what our children's lives might be like. And I think of the lines from Wendell Berry, when despair for the world grows within me and I wake in the night at the least sound. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Being human is hard work. Sometimes the ideas of the orthodoxy are tempting. Just the other day when I was walking in a funk, I thought about how just breathing, just processing oxygen is a salvific act. In goes oxygen, out goes carbon dioxide, and the trees all around me reciprocate. Just by breathing, I'm doing my part. Mary says that's a pretty low bar. The trick is to keep it balanced, I guess, between how much I breathe in and how many trees there are to take it all in. And then here's a wish. If in my breathing I can add a measure of positivity, a kind thought, a bit of joy, then that goes out to the universe as well. And as that lacks any mass at all, it does not diminish as it travels across infinitesimal distances without slowing until it finally collides with something sentient. And then that thing is made just a little brighter, a little happier. Humanizing Jesus, surrendering grandiose tropes, embracing God as loving and good, all this not only frees up the theology, it vanquishes guilt. Turns out that liberating Jesus from the mantle of his divinity frees us all. Our Soul Matters packet this month begins with a reflection on the complexity of resistance, how giving in sometimes is a kind of resistance itself, just as Jennifer said so articulately at the beginning. Deepak Chopra writes that resistance is like a wall holding back the flow of love. Whenever you feel yourself having a reaction of judgment, rejection, or resistance, imagine the opposite, Chopra says. Instead of seeing an adversary, view your partner as totally on your side. Don't focus on what he or she has done to irritate you. Reframe it as an act of pure love, brought into being to teach you the perfect lesson you need to learn in that moment. This isn't a mind game or a trick, he says. At the level of spirit, your beloved acts only from love, holding your highest good at heart. This, I think, is the radical revolutionary message of Jesus. Love everybody. Love God, love yourself. That's it. Easter for me is all about cycles of life. Renewal, life emerging from the murk and the mud, defiant, triumphant. In the urban canyon formed by our apartment building and the Fox River, the grackles are back, attempting nest sites along the balconies. We thought they might not return this year after the greenbelt right out the back was torn up for construction of yet another massive apartment building. But no, the new building just seems to offer more possibilities for them. The ducks are house hunting now too, and along with the goose, blackbirds are starting to look at you sideways. They are not yet in full-on attack mode, but they are running sorties right past your head as they prepare to defend the homeland. Soon they will become more aggressive, dive-bombing anyone perceived as a threat. On Easter's past, I have told of our experience with sandhill cranes, symbols of resurrection if ever there were some, nearly extinct at one point and now thriving everywhere. If you really want to hear something harsh and exciting, go out to a marsh somewhere or a yard and listen to the call of the cranes. Just last night, Mary and I joined a bunch of bird watchers at dusk to hear the crazy whirring mating dance of woodcock. The geese, the grackles, the birds, they dance the same dance that we do. Day by day, dawn arrives with light and life. Year by year, the earth comes alive after a season of darkness. What is immortal? Life is immortal. Life goes on. Life keeps on coming back, irrepressible, defiant. What is incarnate? Truth is incarnate. Truth given shape and form in our bodies. Truth incarnate in everyone. What is gospel? The gospel story. The good news is the story in each one of us, and it's the story of all of us. Your story, my story, our story, alive in hearts and minds of all we touch. Incarnate, immortal in each of us. Blessed be. Let's sing together once again hymn number 1064 in your teal hymnals Blue Boat Home. Please rise and bow to your spirit.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on the mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor nor port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sail moon, my rudder, as I plow sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, the making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor nor port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Please be seated. I was in a bus once in Guatemala with a group of seminarians on a study trip, and the other Unitarian and I on the bus sang that song. All the Lutherans and the Methodists and the Presbyterians, they all knew the tune, as many of you who have attended other Christian churches might as well. They just didn't know the real words yet. I have one other thing to announce that I forgot at the beginning, and that is that for those of you who like to sing, we're going to get the choir back together. In the spirit of resurrection, Alex says. So our first practice will be 2 weeks on the 23rd at 9:30. So if you are interested in singing, please come before the service, 9:30 for practice. Okay? I'll extinguish our chalice, but not the fire of commitment, the light of truth, the warmth of compassion. All of these things we will carry in our hearts till we meet again.
Thanks, David. I was going to bring that up as well. I do have one other announcement-y kind of thing I'd like to say, and I was thinking about sharing it during Joys and Sorrows because it's kind of a joy for me, but it didn't feel like the right time in the service. But so I've had some long days recently because I decided to take on another artistic project on top of like the teaching and stuff here that I do, and music direct for a professional production of Into the Woods. That's happening. It's Forte Theater Company, and they're based in Franklin. And I'm very proud of my work on it. And the It opens this coming Friday, and then we'll run for 2 weekends, so the weekend of the 14th and then the weekend of the 21st at the Sabre Center for the Performing Arts in Franklin, if anyone's interested in a evening at the theater. Thank you. This is a song by Cat Stevens. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass. The sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Broken like the first morning, blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world.